The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadows that seemed to move with their own purpose. Representatives from 47 species sat in tiered rows, their varied forms creating a tapestry of scales, chitin, plasma, and geometries that defied easy description. At the chamber's heart stood the arbitration sphere, where the most serious matters of galactic law were decided. Today's matter was humans. Hi. Arbiter Zixtela raised one of her 6 crystalline arms, and the chamber fell silent. Her species, the Vorthek, had overseen galactic justice for 12,000 years, their natural telepathic abilities making them ideal judges of truth and intent. Around her, the sphere's energy field hummed with barely contained power. The matter before us, Zixtela's voice resonated through bioacoustic translators, concerns the species designation request filed by the recently discovered humans of Sol 3. They claim sapient status and request full membership in the galactic community. Ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the assembly. The Keth delegation, resembling metallic spiders the size of ground vehicles, clicked their approval. The aquatic Murhai bubbled something that their translators rendered as sardonic laughter. The species in question, continued Ambassador Tresh of the Hegemony Worlds, his serpentine form coiling as he spoke, has existed in their current evolutionary state for barely 200,000 cycles. They have achieved rudimentary space travel, yes, but lack the fundamental understanding of galactic civilization that true sapience requires. They cannot even communicate properly, added Counselor Vexara, her gaseous form shifting colors to indicate disdain. Their emotional responses are chaotic, unpredictable. They form irrational attachments to inferior life forms and refuse to abandon them even when logic dictates otherwise. High Arbiter Zixtela consulted the data streams flowing through her consciousness. The human delegation has requested the opportunity to demonstrate their sapience through traditional methods. However, given the unusual nature of their species, I propose we employ the ancient trial. The chamber erupted in surprised harmonics, clicks, and bioelectrical discharges. The ancient trial had not been used in over 800 years. It was reserved for species whose nature was so alien that standard testing proved inadequate. The parameters? Asked Ambassador Tresh, though his tone suggested he already knew he would not approve. Family unit and their domestic companion will face Omega-7 in the Crucible arena if they demonstrate true sapience. Through their choices under extreme duress, humanity will be granted immediate full membership status. If they fail, Zixtela paused, her crystalline features refracting the chamber's light into painful angles. Their species will be classified as non-sapient and relegated to protected status under hegemony oversight. The implications hung in the recycled atmosphere like a poison cloud. Protected status meant eternal servitude. Their world treated as a nature preserve with humans as the wildlife. 300 light-years away, the human colony ship Endeavour received the Council's transmission. Captain Maria Santos read the terms twice before summoning her senior staff to the bridge. They want a family, she said simply, displaying the transmission's translation on the main screen. One family to represent all of humanity in something called the Ancient Trial. Commander Chun Wu leaned forward in his chair. What exactly does this trial involve? Unknown. The message specifies only that the family will face something called Omega-7 in an arena setting. They can bring whatever they consider essential for survival, but only what a family unit would reasonably possess. The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Beyond the viewports, Earth hung blue and beautiful, unaware that its entire future hung in balance. Volunteers? Asked Captain Santos. Every hand on the bridge rose simultaneously. The chosen family was the Hendersons. Mark, a former Marine turned engineer. Sarah, a veterinarian with expertise in xenobiology. Their 8-year-old daughter Emma. And Max, their 3-year-old golden retriever. They had been selected not for any special heroism, but because they represented humanity's average. A normal family with normal bonds and normal love, The transport to the Galactic Council's testing facility took 14 days. During that time, representatives from various species visited the family, ostensibly to explain the process but actually to study them. The Henderson family found themselves observed like specimens in a laboratory. "Why do you maintain the domestic animal?" asked Dr. Veltar, a Keth researcher whose mechanical limbs clicked constantly as he took notes. "It serves no practical purpose for survival testing." Mark Henderson looked up from where he was brushing Max's golden coat. "Max isn't just an animal. He's family. Define family in this context. Someone you love unconditionally. Someone you die to protect. Someone who'd do the same for you." Dr. Veltar's translation unit struggled with the concept. After several processing cycles, it simply rendered the statement as irrational emotional bond unable to quantify. Sarah Henderson watched the exchange while reviewing what little information they had been given about their test. "What exactly is Omega-7?" she asked. "A measuring device," Dr. Veltar replied. "It assesses survival instincts, logical reasoning, and willingness to sacrifice inefficient elements for species survival. Very accurate. Very final. And if we refuse to sacrifice anything, then you fail and your species is classified as non-sapient due to inability to make logical survival choices." 8-year-old Emma looked up from her coloring book. "What if the logical choice is wrong?" Dr. Veltar's optical sensors focused on her with something approaching interest. "Logic cannot be incorrect. Logic is universal constant." "But logic said the world was flat once," Emma replied. "And logic said humans couldn't fly? Sometimes being wrong is right." The translation unit sparked briefly, then went silent. Dr. Veltar hurriedly excused himself to recalibrate his equipment. The Crucible Arena existed in a pocket dimension, accessible only through the Council's most advanced technology. When the Henderson family stepped through the portal, they found themselves in what appeared to be a vast amphitheater carved from black stone. Seating for 50,000 spectators rose in concentric circles around a central arena floor that stretched nearly a kilometer in diameter. They were not alone. The arena floor held what appeared to be a small ecosystem: sparse vegetation, scattered rocks, a thin stream of water running along one edge. At the center stood a simple shelter constructed of metal and polymer sheets. "Welcome to the Crucible," came High Arbiter Zixtala's voice from everywhere and nowhere. "You have been provided with basic shelter and access to water. Food rations for 3 days are located within the shelter structure. Your task is simple: survive until the testing period concludes." Mark Henderson felt Sarah's hand slip into his. Emma pressed close to his other side while Max sat alertly at his feet, golden ears pricked forward. "When does the testing begin?" Mark called out. "It already has." The first sign of Omega-7 was a vibration through the arena floor. Then came the sound, a deep, thrumming note that seemed to emerge from the stone itself. In the shelter, emergency rations scattered as the building shook. "What is that?" Emma whispered. Before anyone could answer, Omega-7 emerged from what had appeared to be solid rock. The creature was beautiful in the way that natural disasters are beautiful, terrible, inevitable, and utterly beyond human scale. It stood 4 meters at its lowest point, its body a complex arrangement of crystalline structures that refracted light into hypnotic patterns. 6 legs, each ending in appendages that looked capable of crushing steel, carried it with fluid grace across the arena floor, but it was the creature's head that made Sarah Henderson's breath catch in her throat. Omega-7 possessed eyes, dozens of them, arranged in complex geometric patterns across what might have been a face. Each eye was a different color, and each seemed to track the family independently. "Magnificent, isn't it?" came Dr. Veltar's voice through speakers embedded in the arena walls. Omega-7 represents the apex of predatory evolution. It was designed by the first galactic civilization specifically to test the survival responses of developing sapient species. "Designed?" Sarah called out, her veterinary instincts analyzing the creature's movement patterns. "It's artificial?" "Bioengineered but functionally alive." It possesses intelligence roughly equivalent to your species' average, enhanced reflexes, adaptive camouflage, and most importantly, an instinct to identify and eliminate the weakest members of any group it encounters. The creature's attention had fixed on their location. Those dozens of eyes swiveled in their direction, and suddenly the arena felt much smaller. The test parameters are simple, Dr. Veltar continued. Omega-7 will hunt you until either you are dead or the testing period expires in 72 hours. It cannot be permanently killed by conventional means, though it can be temporarily disabled. Your survival depends entirely on the choices you make. Mark Henderson's military training kicked in automatically. Cover, concealment, avenues of escape, weapons assessment. They had emergency rations, a basic shelter, and access to scattered rocks and vegetation. Against a bioengineered predator with enhanced capabilities, there's one additional para. Omega-7 moved with the fluid precision of a perfect killing machine, its crystalline hide shifting through the spectrum as it approached. The Henderson family had seconds to react before the creature would be within striking distance. Mark Henderson's marine training took over. Sarah, Emma, shelter, now! They scrambled toward the small structure at the arena's center while Mark positioned himself between his family and the approaching predator. The stone fragment in his hand felt pathetically inadequate against something designed to hunt sapient species. But it was what he had. Max, however, had other ideas. The golden retriever suddenly bolted from Emma's side, racing not away from Omega-7 but directly toward it. His movement was unlike anything the Galactic observers had seen from a domestic animal. Purposeful, tactical, intelligent. Max, no! Emma cried out, but the dog was already in motion. Instead of attacking the massive creature directly, Max began running in a tight circle around Omega-7's legs. The predator's dozens of eyes tried to track the fast-moving target, but Max's golden coat seemed to interfere with the creature's visual processing. More importantly, the dog's movement forced Omega-7 to constantly rotate, disrupting its forward momentum. Fascinating, murmured Dr. Veltar from the observation chamber. The domestic animal demonstrates tactical awareness. Mark Henderson saw the opening Max had created and sprinted toward the shelter, shouting for his family to get inside. But Sarah Henderson had stopped running. Her veterinary training was analyzing Omega-7's movements, and she had noticed something crucial. "Mark!" she called out. "Its joints. Look at the leg joints." Omega-7's 6 legs ended in complex appendages designed for crushing, but the joints where they connected to the main body showed exposed organic material. The bioengineering was sophisticated, but it still required vulnerable connection points. Max continued his circling pattern, staying just out of reach of the creature's sweeping appendages. The dog's brown eyes remained focused on his human family, and Mark realized that Max wasn't just creating a distraction. The dog was hurting the predator, using instincts bred into golden retrievers for generations of working with humans. "He's moving it toward the stream," Sarah whispered in amazement. The shallow water feature that ran along one edge of the arena had seemed like a minor detail, but Max was systematically driving Omega-7 toward it. The creature, focused on tracking the fast-moving target circling its legs, didn't seem to notice its changing position. Emma Henderson watched from the shelter entrance, her 8-year-old mind processing the scene with startling clarity. "Mom, Dad, look at its eyes!" Both parents focused on Omega-7's most prominent feature. The dozens of eyes, each a different color, were indeed tracking Max independently. But Emma had noticed something the adults had missed. "They're not looking at us anymore," she said. Max made it forget about us. High Arbiter Zixtala observed from the primary viewing platform, her crystalline features refracting the arena's lights. "Explain this behavior," she demanded of Dr. Veltar. "The domestic animal appears to be employing pack-hunting strategies," the Keth researcher replied, his mechanical limbs clicking rapidly as he processed data. "But this should not be possible. It is a companion species, not a predator, and yet it demonstrates clear tactical intelligence." In the arena below, Max had successfully maneuvered Omega-7 to the stream's edge. The creature's attention remained fixed on the circling dog, those dozens of eyes creating a hypnotic array of tracking beams. But the soft ground near the water was already affecting the predator's footing. Mark Henderson saw his chance. "Emma, give me your jump rope." His daughter didn't question the request. She pulled the bright yellow rope from her small backpack and tossed it to her father. Mark caught it and immediately began fashioning a crude snare. Sarah Henderson was thinking 3 steps ahead. "If we can tangle its legs ... it'll fall into the water," Mark finished. "And if it's as top-heavy as it looks ... The plan formed wordlessly between them, the kind of instant communication that develops between people who have lived and loved together for years. Sarah began gathering rocks from around the shelter while Mark prepared his improvised trap. Omega-7, meanwhile, was becoming frustrated. The small golden creature continued to evade its strikes while maintaining its maddening circular pattern. The predator's programming told it to eliminate the weakest member of the group first, but this supposed weakest member was proving remarkably elusive. Max suddenly changed tactics. Instead of circling, he darted directly between Omega-7's front legs, his body low to the ground. The creature reflexively tried to crush him, bringing its massive appendages together with tremendous force, but Max was no longer there. He had rolled beneath the creature's body and emerged behind its rear legs, immediately beginning a new circular pattern. Omega-7 spun around to track him, its weight shifting dangerously on the soft ground. "Now!" Mark shouted. He sprinted from the shelter, Emma's jump rope spread wide between his hands. Sarah was right behind him, arms full of stones. They had one chance to coordinate their attack with. Max's movements. The golden retriever seemed to understand their plan instinctively. As Mark approached with the rope, Max suddenly stopped circling and sat down directly in front of Omega-7. The creature, programmed to eliminate threats, focused all its attention on the now stationary target. Mark dove forward, sliding under the predator's raised appendages to loop the jump rope around 2 of its rear legs. The yellow cord was never designed for such stress, but it held long enough for Mark to pull tight and roll clear. Sarah's rock bombardment struck Omega-7's visual array just as its legs became entangled. Dozens of colorful eyes blinked and refocused, creating momentary confusion in the creature's tracking systems. Omega-7 took one step backward to regain balance and discovered it couldn't move its rear legs independently. The creature's own weight and momentum carried it into the stream with a tremendous splash. Water erupted around the predator's crystalline body, and something extraordinary happened. The bioengineered creature began to emit a harmonious tone, almost musical in its complexity. Its hide, previously shifting through aggressive color patterns, suddenly stabilized into deep blue and silver. "Impossible," breathed Dr. Veltar. High Arbiter Zixtella leaned forward in her observation chair. "Elaborate." Omega-7 is ... singing, and its bio-responses indicate a state of calm. This has never occurred in 800 years of testing. In the arena, the Henderson family approached the stream cautiously. Omega-7 lay partially submerged, its dozens of eyes now focused not on hunting but on something else entirely. The creature's musical tone continued, resonating through the arena's stone structure. Emma Henderson stepped closer than any adult would have dared. "It's not scary anymore." She was right. The terrible predatory presence that had radiated from Omega-7 had vanished. The creature's eyes tracked Emma's movement, but with curiosity rather than hunger. Max approached the stream and, to everyone's amazement, began drinking from the water near the creature. Omega-7's tone shifted, becoming more complex, almost conversational. Sarah Henderson's xenobiology background suddenly provided insight. "It's not just a predator," she said quietly. "Look at its behavior now that it's not following programming." The creature was indeed behaving differently. Its appendages, so threatening moments before, were now moving gently through the water. Several of its eyes had focused on Max, and the musical tone it produced seemed to be directed toward the dog. "Mark," Sarah continued, "I think Omega-7 was designed to test more than just survival instincts. I think it was designed to test our willingness to look beyond the obvious threat." Emma sat down at the stream's edge, just out of reach but clearly unafraid. "Are you hurt?" She asked the creature. Omega-7's musical response shifted again, becoming softer. One of its appendages moved slowly toward Emma, stopping just short of contact. The gesture was unmistakably gentle. Max wagged his tail and took a step closer to the creature. Omega-7's dozens of eyes focused on the dog with what could only be described as interest. The two species, separated by millions of years of evolution and countless light-years of space, seemed to be communicating. "This is unprecedented," reported Dr. Veltar to the assembled observers. "Omega-7 has never displayed social behavior. Its programming specifically prevents interaction beyond predatory responses." High Arbiter Zixthela consulted data streams flowing through her consciousness. "Unless its programming included variables we were not informed of. Variables that could only be triggered by specific behavioral responses from test subjects." The realization spread through the observation chambers like wildfire. The ancient trial wasn't just about survival. It was about recognizing that apparent threats might be something else entirely. Mark Henderson slowly approached the stream. "Sarah, bring the medical supplies from our pack." "Medical supplies?" she asked, but she was already moving. "Look at its left rear appendage joint. The one we targeted with the rope." Sarah looked where Mark indicated and saw what his trained eye had caught. The yellow jump rope had caused minor damage to one of Omega-7's organic connection points. A thin, luminescent fluid was seeping from the joint. "It's injured," she said, without hesitation. Sarah Henderson waded into the stream toward a bioengineered predator that had been hunting. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from 47 species spoke, clicked, harmonized, and discharged bioelectricity simultaneously as they processed what they had witnessed. The ancient trial, unchanged for 800 years, had been completely redefined by a single human family and their dog. High Arbiter Zixthela raised all 6 crystalline arms for silence, her telepathic abilities projecting calm forcefully enough to override the chamber's discord. When the cacophony finally subsided, she spoke with carefully measured authority. "Dr. Veltar, present your analysis." The Keth researcher's mechanical limbs clicked rapidly as he accessed data streams. The Henderson family unit achieved what no species has accomplished in recorded testing history. They transformed Omega-7 from a predatory state to something unprecedented. "Define unprecedented," demanded Ambassador Tresh, his serpentine form coiling with agitation. Omega-7 is currently displaying behaviors that exist nowhere in its programming. Social interaction, protective instincts toward the test subjects, and most significantly, genuine emotional responses. The creature has formed what can only be described as bonds with the human family. Counselor Vexara's gaseous form shifted through colors indicating deep confusion. "This suggests fundamental flaws in our understanding of the testing protocol." High Arbiter Zixthela consulted historical records flowing through her consciousness. "Or fundamental flaws in our understanding of intelligence itself." Dr. Veltar accessed the deepest archives. "Find the original specifications for Omega-7's creation." The chamber waited in tense silence as Dr. Veltar connected to systems that hadn't been accessed in millennia. When the data emerged, his translation unit struggled to process the concepts before rendering them into galactic standard. "Fascinating," he said finally. "And deeply troubling. Elaborate." Omega-7 was not designed merely as a predator. According to these archive specifications, it was created by the first civilization as a test of compassion. The creature's aggressive programming was meant to be overridden by subjects who demonstrated genuine care for others, including their own companions. The implications hit the chamber like a shock wave. Every species that had undergone the ancient trial had failed to understand its true purpose. They had treated it as a test of survival instincts when it was actually a test of moral development. How many species have been classified as non-sapient due to this misunderstanding? Asked ZYX single quotes de la Dr. Veltar's clicking increased in frequency. "All of them. Every species that has faced the ancient trial in the last 800 years has been judged by survival." criteria rather than compassion criteria. We have been measuring intelligence incorrectly. In the arena below, Emma Henderson was teaching Omega-7 a clapping game. The massive creature was attempting to participate using its appendages, creating a rhythmic pattern that resonated through the arena's stone structure. Max lay sprawled across one of the creature's lower appendages like a golden furry blanket. Completely at ease. Sarah Henderson had established a small field laboratory using supplies from their emergency kit, documenting Omega-7's biology with the thoroughness of a professional researcher. Mark Henderson was constructing an improved shelter that could accommodate their new companion, working with the focused efficiency of someone planning a long-term arrangement. None of them showed any intention of leaving Omega-7 behind when the test concluded. High Arbiter Zixthala made a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. Transport me to the arena floor, immediately. Arbiter, direct contact with test subjects during the trial is unprecedented. Dr. Veltar, everything about this trial is unprecedented. The protocols were designed for a test we fundamentally misunderstood. I will speak with the humans directly. The transport beam materialized Zixthala in the arena's center, her crystalline form refracting the lighting into complex patterns. The Henderson family looked up from their activities, showing curiosity rather than fear at the sudden appearance of a six-armed crystalline being. High Arbiter, Mark Henderson said respectfully, standing but not moving away from Omega-7. Is the trial concluded? Mr. Henderson, I must ask you a question that will determine your species' future in the galactic community. Do you understand what you have accomplished here? Mark looked at his wife, who was carefully documenting cellular samples from Omega-7's voluntarily provided tissue. He looked at his daughter, who was now braiding flower stems while sitting in the curve of one of the creature's appendages. He looked at Max, who was demonstrating the universe's first interspecies belly rub by rolling over to expose his stomach to Omega-7's gentle touch. We did what humans do, he said simply. We took care of someone who needed help. Zixthala's crystalline features shifted, a sign of deep emotional processing among her species. Mr. Henderson, Omega-7 was designed to kill you unless you demonstrated a specific trait, the willingness to extend compassion to something that appeared to be a threat. Your species is the first in 800 years to recognize that apparent enemies might simply be misunderstood beings. Sarah Henderson looked up from her work. Are you saying this was never really about survival? Dr. Henderson, your species has revealed that we have been testing for the wrong qualities for nearly a millennium. We believe sapience meant the ability to make logical survival decisions. You have proven that true intelligence includes the capacity to recognize when survival logic should be overruled by compassion. Emma Henderson raised her hand like she was in school. Does this mean Max gets to come home with us? Miss Henderson, Max was never in danger of being left behind. But I believe Omega-7 presents a more complex situation. The massive creature had been following the conversation with obvious interest, its dozens of eyes tracking between speakers. When its name was mentioned, it produced a complex musical tone that the translation systems rendered as inquiry and mild concern. Omega-7 has never displayed attachment to test subjects before, Zixthala continued. It appears to have formed genuine emotional bonds with your family. This creates an unprecedented situation. Mark Henderson knelt beside the creature and placed his hand on what might have been its head. Omega-7's musical response was unmistakably affectionate. It doesn't want to be alone anymore, does it? Mr. Henderson, Omega-7 has been alone for 800 years. It was created to test compassion but has never experienced compassion itself until now. Sarah Henderson stood, her scientific mind working through the implications. High Arbiter, what would happen if we chose to stay? Stay? Here, in the arena, with Omega-7, if this creature has been alone for 8 centuries, if it's finally found companionship, then maybe the right answer isn't to leave. The suggestion sent shock waves through the observation chambers above. Delegates from 47 species leaned forward as they realized a human family was considering permanent exile to provide companionship to a bioengineered creature. Emma Henderson looked up at her parents. Can we really stay with our new friend? Max wagged his tail and licked Omega-7's nearest appendage. The creature's response was a complex harmony that needed no translation. Pure joy da high Arbiter Zixtela felt, something she had not experienced in her 300-year lifespan. Moral vertigo. These humans were prepared to sacrifice their return to their own world to provide companionship to a creature that had tried to kill them hours earlier. There is another option, she said slowly. One that has never been offered before. Tell us, Mark said. Omega-7 could come with you. To Earth, we have the technology to sustain it in your world's environment. It would require unprecedented cooperation between the Galactic Council and your species, but ... But? Sarah prompted. But it would also require us to acknowledge that we have been wrong about the nature of intelligence for 800 years. It would require us to reclassify multiple species we have deemed non-sapient. It would require us to admit that compassion, not survival logic, is the true measure of sapience. Emma Henderson stood up and walked to High Arbiter Zixtela. The 8-year-old girl looked up at the towering crystalline being without fear. Sometimes being wrong is the first step to being right, she said. Repeating the wisdom she had shared days earlier with Dr. Veltar, Zixtela knelt to Emma's level, her crystalline features refracting the arena's light into gentle patterns. Miss Henderson, would you be willing to help us learn how to be right? Will Omega-7 be happy on Earth? I believe Omega-7 will be happy wherever your family is. Emma looked back at her parents, at Max, and at the massive creature that was producing soft musical tones while waiting for her answer. Then yes, we'll help. 3 months later, the first Interspecies Compassion Institute opened in a specially constructed facility outside Denver, Colorado. Omega-7 served as both a subject of study and a teacher, helping human researchers understand the biological basis of empathy across species lines. Max had appointed himself as the creature's official companion, spending his days playing elaborate games with a being from across the galaxy. Their friendship became the foundation for the first universal communication protocol based on emotional rather than linguistic translation. The Henderson family found themselves at the center of a galactic revolution in understanding. Species that had been classified as non-sapient for center.